In today's episode, I speak to Dana, who is a workplace strategist. She helps organisations have a company that individuals want to work. We discuss how workplace war can be created and that leaders are role models and are expected to behave in a certain way. Dana also explains how mavericks can find a job that they would be happy in. She also shares how employers can create a better workplace. This is a fun conversation, so listen up. Before we begin our conversation, here is a quick shout out to the pathologically curious. Check out the Maverick Paradox magazine. It's a digital magazine written by mavericks for business owners and professionals. You can find the magazine at themaverickparadox.com. The magazine's aim is to provoke maverick leadership everywhere. Welcome to the Maverick Paradox podcast, where we explore what it is to be a maverick and discover effective modes of leadership. I am Judith Germain, and my mission is to propel the maverick mindset into a world where character and integrity will ultimately have a higher premium than personality and bureaucracy. So thank you for joining me on this journey. If you would like to continue with me, then please subscribe to my podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or one of the other popular podcast platforms. And today we have Dana Vogelmeier. How are you doing, Dana?
I'm doing fabulous. Thank you, Judith. How are you today?
I'm great. So, Dana, tell us about you.
Well, I am a workplace culture strategist. And what that means is I help leaders and teams create workplaces where people love to work. Nothing is worse, I think, than being in a job where you are miserable or just unfulfilled. You don't even have to be miserable, but just not liking it. And I've been there personally, but I've also been there where I just loved everybody I worked with and my team and the work I did. And, it makes such a difference in how you feel. So I worked in the corporate world for about 33 years and left in 2018 to go out on my own because of all of my experiences that I had had. I felt like, and I'd been preparing and did some research, and I felt like I had a good feel for assessing what things are maybe not making the workplace great. And sometimes it's as easy as having some good conversations or maybe a rewards program of some sort. Sometimes it's a couple of easy little tweaks to make it better, but sometimes it takes a little more. But I really enjoy that because I want people to love going to work every day. We work 40 or 50 years in our lifetimes, sometimes longer. So we just really need to find ways to make it great.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm so intrigued with the title of workplace culture strategist, because I'm like, how does that work?
Yeah. So, and it really is much like any other strategy, but we kind of start with assessing a current state, looking at all of the variables that are impacting the workplace. So that could be remote, but it could also be in person. And then what is it that people kind of don't like or would like to see change or are experiencing that is just not creating the best? And when people are really feeling great and feel appreciated, and when they come to work, it really impacts their attitude and the effort that they put into the job. So if they feel like their leadership is caring about them, providing good recognition, good rewards, having good feedback, providing great development for them for future opportunities, there are a lot of different variables. When people see that and experience it, then they will go over and above the call of duty for their team and for the company and for their leader. So we assess. And then we start looking at, okay, where can we make some changes and how do we make those changes? And we list out sort of a top 3 set of initiatives and make a plan, put it in place. And then on the back end, assess our metrics to see if we're moving the needle. So it is really implemented much like any other strategy that a company would work on. It's just looking at different variables.
You know what? Thank you for that. I think that's so interesting. I'm assuming that only forward-thinking companies do that.
Yes, I think you're right, Judith. or like something is just really, really bad. It's like,
would they normally go to HR for that? So I'm just trying to think, how do they reach? It's like, I'm just trying to imagine someone going, I need a workplace strategist. I just can't, I can see them going, I need HR to sort that out. So do you like target HR people?
Oftentimes I do. And sometimes it's the leadership person who's recognizing that something is just off, but really can't pinpoint it. And I think that it's beneficial for organizations to look to somebody externally when they have these kind of issues, because sometimes you're just in there and you're too close to it and you don't see it, or it's something that maybe you see and accept. So you think, well, we don't need to change that. So sometimes an external person can see things and then also ask good questions of other people and pull out some information. And it could, be something really small that seems really small to the leader, but to the people, it might be a really big deal. Yeah. So, and it's kind of, if you think a little bit about change management efforts, and when we work on the people side of change, there you have the same type of issues that different people are going to experience the change in different ways. So one example that I will share with you that was one that really opened my eyes as a young leader. We were in the office and we were going through a remodel. And we were going to have new carpet and new chairs, and everything was just getting updated. And one of the people on my team did not want to give up her old chair. And it was orange, and the new office scheme was going to be blue. So she'd have the only orange chair. And, to everybody else, they were like, yeah, I want the new chair, the nice new chair. It's going to be great. But to her, that was a huge deal. And after some conversation and everything, our higher leadership said, just let her keep her orange chair. It's not the end of the world. It's not like we're violating the policy or anything like that. We're just going to have all blue chairs except one. And so, we did, but that was, in that change management initiative, on the people side of the change, that was a huge deal to her. And if we, if our leadership had said, we're taking your chair, you're going to have to use the blue one, that really would have had an impact not only on her, but probably everybody else, because everybody else felt really good that her name was Mary Lou. Everybody else felt very good. Mary Lou got to keep her chair.
It's kind of funny that we seem to die a death over stuff that's just really isn't important. And you kind of, that's what I'm saying, I can see why you're a strategist, because, the strategy is to achieve X. And whether someone has an orange chair or a blue one doesn't really make much difference in the scheme of things. So it's a bit silly that people don't do that. It's a bit like, I remember years ago, like it is years ago because I'm an old bird now, when I was a young bird and we was working in a call centre. And it was one of so in the UK, it kind of, at that time, call centres wasn't really a thing. It was just kind of a new idea. And in the industry I was in, and the pens that we had were really, if you think about now, they got these tiny little boxes. It was like the lap of luxury. They were huge. And they were done in a way that allowed community so you could have, probably 6 people could easily talk to each other in this bubble of the pen. It was really huge when I think about this now. And I remember it was like the call centre, the London call centre I was in, was really efficient, productive, everyone was engaged, and which is quite unusual for call centres. And the boss decided that everybody was getting on too well, so he would just move people for the sake of moving people. But what was so stupid was that it so happened when we were originally put in the call centres, they mixed up functional experts. So whilst the calls are coming in a generalised way, people were close to experts to the different queries. So within your bubble of 6, you could solve whatever query the customer had. So when he decided that everyone just got on too well, because there's 200 people, he mixed everybody up, all of a sudden you're no longer near functional experts. So you're less, so not only you're not with the people you've built friendships with, you're now no longer able to answer queries because you just don't know the answer, and you can't just swivel on the chair and say, Keith, what's the answer to this?
Yeah.
So, you know, and it was just, I remember my boss asking him, why did you do that? And he goes, everyone's just too comfortable. I don't like people being comfortable. And I thought, how on earth do you, even then, even though I wasn't the manager at the time, I was like, how on earth do you get paid to do what you do?
Right. Right.
When you've disabled 200 people who, and the end result ended up with the whole of that unit, and I was one of them, going on strike because it was like the final straw for us because he was a bit of an idiot. So we just went, fine, we're not working. And we just, because it was one of those areas, you say I was young, that it had flexi time, and you were allowed, if you had a lot of flexi time, you were allowed to finish at 3:30. Even though it was a unionised environment, no one spoke, but everyone just got up at 3:30 and just left that day. And literally 200 people, just like the whole London centre, just everyone went home. And there was literally, and you would have thought it was organised, but it wasn't. Everyone was just like,
that was just it.
That's it, we're off. And it was just like, can you imagine, for the stupidity, because you always do lots of stupid. It was a bit like a David Brent, actually. You know, it was pretty much like that. The American version is Michael Scott, isn't it? Yeah, so it was very much like that. So it was just kind of like, that was the final straw of a long list of stupid stuff that he was doing, that everyone just said, you don't need us, so we'll just go home. And then he had to explain how did the most experienced, most productive call centre in the country end up with nobody answering the calls for the final 2 hours.
Right. And that was going to be a hard thing to explain. But, I was just thinking that when you said it, Judith, like what a really negative impact that would have on morale for no reason.
Absolutely no. And the funny thing is that because of the way the flex time worked, you didn't have to start work till 10. So everybody came in at normal times and just sat at the desks and listened to the phones go off. And everyone just turned and looked at it, was like, looking at the clock, waiting till 10 o'clock before they started. Like, they would have been in there since 8, going like, nah, I'm not logging on till 10.
Yeah. And when you have those things that negatively impact the workforce, people often don't forget either. So even if he, made it right, or maybe even someone else came in and made it right, but people still remember that happened. And it takes a little while to build back some of that trust that, that leaders have their employees' best interest in mind, or that they really do care about them and their futures and their lives.
I mean, like, for that, like, I have to laugh because I've forgotten about it because I haven't thought about it for a long time. But it makes me laugh because it was on the same day that he decided to have a go at probably the most loved employee for going to the toilet, and he was 6 minutes and to go to the toilet, which is not surprising when you have to walk down length for the thing and then, when the day before he was 5 minutes. He decided that to ask this kid, who was about, now you know I'm old now because he was about 20, so that asking publicly in an open plan office what to explain why he was a minute later and whether he had any problems and whether he'd been to the doctor. And I remember one of them, everyone just stopped talking to whoever they were talking to, and the customer was swiveling around on the chair and just looking like, I can't believe you're having this conversation publicly over a minute for somebody who works so hard. So then when he did the whole thing about, I'm going to mix it all up now, it's like, you know what, that's it, we're done.
Yeah. This reminds me of another kind of funny story too, that there was like an office setting and, cubicles. And then the leader was in the office, like in an office. And people oftentimes went to the break room and got snacks and would bring them back to their desks. And one employee went one day to the break room and she got microwave popcorn, and she, popped her popcorn, and you know how that smell just kind of wafts the air, so she's bringing it back to her desk, and like some of her coworkers are even looking because it's like, I smell popcorn. The boss stepped out of her office and like looked around and kind of, smelling, and she's like, who made microwave popcorn? And she started yelling, she's like, I hate the smell of microwave popcorn. No more microwave popcorn in this office ever, anyone. And they're looking at each other, the boss goes back in the office. Now the employees are looking at each other like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that just happened. And why more popcorn? And it was kind of like your situation too. There was one guy on the team where he had just had it. Like that was the final straw. So that night he went out and purchased a flash drive that was popcorn scented. And he came in early the next morning and he put it in his leader's computer.
That's the maverick right there.
Yeah. So when she comes in, she's smelling popcorn in her office and she's like, who's got popcorn? I smell popcorn. Who's got the popcorn?
But morale increased.
And he didn't tell anybody. He didn't tell any of his coworkers he did it. So they're all kind of, I don't know. No one's got popcorn. I don't know. No one's got popcorn. And eventually, she did figure it out. But, I often tell that story as, if it's come to the point of your employees making an effort like that.
It's war, isn't it? You've very much lost it. Because you're talking about, you're now in a situation where open warfare is going on, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. That's a problem. You need a workplace culture strategist. And, like in your case and in that case, those leaders, like they are always being watched. And what they say and do has an impact on the lives and the way people feel in the workplace. And sometimes they just kind of walk around like oblivious to that fact. And you can't do that when you're in leadership. Everything you do, people are watching and assessing.
And they should be too.
Yeah.
It's a big responsibility to lead people somewhere. It needs to be more than a title. You need to see real leadership. And I think like the particular boss, I'm trying really hard not to say their name now. It was almost like everything that person did was problematic. And it became really clear that individual had never really led at such a senior level before, because the way he was leading felt so junior for someone so senior. And I don't think he was used to, because he was new into, so it was in a particular industry that has its own norms, and he'd been from another industry and and didn't bother to take the time to figure out what's normal. So he would so you'd have a customer asking for something specific, and you were saying they couldn't have it because you were legally unable to give it to them. And then he would override you, and you're like, you can't, it's against the law. You just can't. It's not like you're trying to be, you cannot do it. That's it. And he'd be like, yeah, we can find a way. And it's like, no, seriously, you can't find a way. It's just like, you're not allowed to do this. And then he'd be like, well, can you phone up and tell them? It's like, what, when I told you not to say yes and then you said yes anyway, now I have to undo your problem and they're going to shout at me. It was that kind of inability to lead. So I learned an awful lot from him as to how not to do leadership.
Yeah. I had a few of those too.
So he was great. He was a great teacher. So mavericks don't put up with a lot of rubbish. So how does a maverick manage to find a situation, like a company or a job, that they can be happy in?
Oh, that's such a good question, and not an easy thing to do. Because you're trying to assess the culture from the outside. Yeah. And, there are some things that can be a good tell when you're interviewing with a company. And I think a couple of things are, especially if you're going in person, looking around at the office, and an easy thing is it clean? Are people smiling? Does it sound like a good kind of jovial workplace? Or is it kind of silent and people are just head down, and maybe there's no fun or engagement or collaboration happening anywhere? That's, I know it's a snapshot in time, but it's something to look at. Also on glassdoor.com, their ratings on there, so you can look at that and see what other people are saying. The thing is, because you can do this with people if you know someone who works at that company, or someone who has a friend that works at that company, you can ask questions. But not everyone has the same experience, and not every company is best for all of us. So I can tell people to like, take that into consideration, like what a workplace that one person may love, I might not like that environment. So ask the right kinds of questions. And I think it's fair game too in the interview to ask about, do you have, when people get proficient in their role, do you have opportunities for them to cross-train or to do development opportunities, or maybe looking for an opportunity in another department in the organization or something like that? Are there opportunities to go to conferences or to take classes and enhance your skills? So what are the important things to the individual? Because it also could be, if someone's really interested in finding good daycare around, they could ask questions about that. And maybe there's some kind of an employee assistance program, or maybe they have an arrangement with a local daycare or something. But, what's important to the person is what they need to look for. It's hard to, even if you're interviewing with the person that you're going to report to, you can kind of get a feel for the rapport there, but it's hard to know what's important to them. And so at the tail end of interviews, when they say, do you have any questions for me? I just tell people, really think about how you want to word the question. And it really needs to be something that's important to you. Don't ask a question, just ask a question. But what is important to you? And then find the right way to word that, so you're getting the information you need and selecting. An interview, I feel like, is both people are selecting. Because just because they offer you the job doesn't mean you have to take it. It might not be the right thing. So is this the place that you want to select? And then once you're on the inside, if you're already in, you've been hired and it's just not what you were hoping it would be or thought it would be, assess if there's an option for you to influence change. And by doing that, you might get what you want. And a lot of that comes through modeling. Just model the behavior you want to see others and your leader to give. So for example, if, there's people sitting together and they're talking negatively about either a situation or another coworker, just don't be a part of it. And don't get into the things that are going to bring you down and kind of drag others down. Like, set the bar higher, be a professional, and create the environment that you want to work in. And you can influence other people in that way. Same way with your leader. If you're not getting one-on-one feedback and one-on-one meetings and things of that nature, ask for them. Could we have a meeting so I can see how I'm doing? I'd like to learn about other opportunities or whatever it might be, so that you're, again, influencing the atmosphere. If it doesn't look like it's going to change, then I recommend moving on. And because again, we work way too long in our lifetimes. We spend too much time at work. Don't invest a lot of time in a place that is going to not be fulfilling for you.
Yeah, I think they are really good points you made there. The reason I kind of had a bit of a giggle, because whenever it used to be performance review time with me, my bosses always used to leave me to the end, and they always used to put more time in because they knew that I'd ask loads of questions. So like, everybody else would probably have like a 30-minute kind of conversation. I'd be at least an hour, because I'd have looked at all the criteria, I'd have self-assessed myself. And then when they go through it, I would go, that's interesting because I think, or I agree with that because of this, and stuff like that. It was just, but it was never like adversarial. It was more of a case of, I need to understand what you think I'm doing, and I need to, you understand what I think, and then we can come up to, and what I think, even though I've always been that from age of 17, I think what it meant was that the managers became better at performance reviews, because for them to be able, because they got like, oh, we've got Jude, so I need to think about what I think. So ultimately I'd get better performance reviews because they'd thought about it. And two, they would get better at it because they need to, now they couldn't just get away with saying, yeah, your performance is great, but it would be good if you could improve on social skills or something. Because I would have been like, so what do you mean by that? Exactly by what way? What evidence have you got? So people then got better at doing it.
Yeah.
Which I thought, that's why I was giggling, because it's funny when people go, yeah, I put aside an hour and a half for you, Jude. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, and you're right. It does make them better when you question, because then they have to prepare differently the next time. And you, by asking, have made it better for everybody.
Yeah, and it means that I can then perform. I don't mind if they said I'm rubbish, but give me a reason so I can do something better the next time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just, I'm a bit weird like that. So I think this has been fantastic. I thought for a final thing, I mentioned, because I get a lot of people who are leaders in organisations as well listening. So if someone's in an organisation, how can they show appreciation to their employees so they have a better workplace?
Oh, I love this, because I think there's a number of ways and many things you can do that are not costly. So sometimes people say we don't do things like that because we don't have a budget. But just think about the impact that a thank you has on people's morale. I mean, that feels good when someone says, thank you for doing that, and especially if it's something that maybe wasn't on your plan for the day. So if someone sat in on a particular meeting because another person was out and they're like, okay, I'll go to that meeting and I'll take down the information and bring it back. So they were planning their time at work to do something else, but they made a change to help someone else. That should be recognized. The other thing is for people who are okay with it, recognizing them in a team meeting for saying, I just want to call out Judith. I really appreciate the fact that she stepped in when Dana was out on Wednesday and she went to the meeting, and thank you so much for doing that. It feels good. And then other people are like, oh, like they see that there's recognition.
Yeah. And then they'll recognize others. It's like
other people. That's right. Yeah. And that's what I was going to say. Some peer recognition, a thank you note, handwritten thank you note. I still have notes that people wrote to me in the many years that I worked in the corporate world. I kept many of them because they just felt so meaningful. And, periodically it's fun to go back and look at them and kind of remember what was going on at that time. But the other thing is, if you do have budget, think about how people will feel when they get it, what it is that you're giving them. So if it's a certificate, think about the wording. And certificates obviously are very cheap. But, think about the appropriate wording. Don't just make it generic, make it meaningful. You can also do some team competitions and have prizes, things like that. Now, I know that some organizations are really getting much more creative, and there's an advertising agency which they have something called Summer Fridays, and this is not super common in the United States. I'm not sure if it is there, but in July and August, no one works on Friday, and they tell all of their clients too, we don't work on Fridays in July and August, and so they get to have a 4-day work week of when they can have a long weekend and go do something fun or whatever. And then other things that I have seen that I thought were really pretty innovative. When someone has a baby, whether it's a male or female, when someone has a baby, they give the gift of 1 year of diaper service.
Oh, that's a good gift.
Yes. So, it's delivered, delivered and picked up and washed and all that stuff. And just, again, kind of a relief, like, oh my gosh, now I don't have to worry about that, one less thing. And then of course.
And it's good for the environment too.
Yes. And working parents, anything you can do to help working parents with flexibility or daycare options or things like that.
See, that shows you care.
It does.
It was just made me think, I can't remember the name. I remember doing a podcast with somebody, and they said that years ago they were working in a country where if you did really, really well, they used to give like brand new computers to the individuals or something like that. And they were really surprised that what was happening is people would have a brand new computer and then they would sell it. And then I think he asked one guy, why have you sold this, brand new computer? And he said, well, to be honest, my family needs to eat. So what was happening, so they were rewarding their employees with these really expensive gifts, but it meant nothing because of the situation that everybody was in, the country that they're in. It was really that they need, so they then changed their reward system to actually help the families and give them, so you said, like their diapers, give them something that's actually needed, because they didn't need a gold watch, didn't need a computer. What they needed was, as he said, formula for a year, or nappies, or whatever, a car that works. And he said that obviously productivity went up, because they said for the company, the cost difference, there wasn't a cost difference. It was not like this new thing was more expensive. It just made more sense.
Yeah. I love that. And asking the question got them to a much better place. So I really respect the fact that they said, to the person, however they found out that they sold it, can I know why? I mean, that's just powerful information. Okay, so now we're going to work on a different kind of recognition and reward system. And those things go a long way for people. I know that there are leaders who believe that, hey, we pay you and you have benefits and that should be enough, but it's not. It's just not. So what else are you doing to create an environment where people know that you care about them? And if you want them to care about your results, then you need to demonstrate that you care about that. Two-way street.
So, Dana, that's really cool. I'm really pleased that we've had this conversation. And it's so unusual. I've not heard of anybody outside of HR focusing on this important area. So thank you for letting me learn something new. I really appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. It was a pleasure to meet with you, Judith. And anybody that wants to really focus on making a great workplace, I think it's really important. And whether they're coming from a leadership position or not, or maybe a professional person in HR, I mean, it really takes everybody to create a workplace where people feel good to come every day.
Brilliant. Thank you. Would you come back again?
Oh, I'd love to. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you once again for tuning into the Maverick Paradox podcast. I hope you have enjoyed listening to my conversation with Dana as much as I enjoyed having it. At the Maverick Paradox, we improve your impact and influence by enabling you to effectively strategize, innovate, and execute. To find out more, contact us at judith@maverickparadox.com. Thank you. Are you interested in Maverick leadership but unsure how to apply it? We can help. Judith Germain has collaborated with David Chislett to produce a 12-part video series on Maverick leadership and how to apply it to your creative thinking skills. This will truly get you thinking and putting into action your ability to innovate and execute, truly changing your outcomes. Check out the show notes for the link or contact us on judith@maverickparadox.com for more information. If you are pathologically curious and would love to find out more about the Maverick Paradox, then please subscribe to this podcast on one of the popular podcast platforms. Alternatively, you could explore our resources on Mavericks at maverickparadox.com or read the Maverick Paradox magazine. We publish frequently each week. If you subscribe, you will get our monthly newsletter. And let's not forget my book, The Maverick Paradox, The Secret Power Behind Successful Leaders. For those that love a good discussion, you could apply to join our exclusive Facebook group. Finally, if you would like to work with us or are interested in the Maverick at work, check out maverickparadox.co.uk.